The following episode depicts acts of violence. Listener discretion is advised. It's September 14th, 1982. A call is placed to the home of Charles McArthur on Tarrytown Lane in Worcester's West Tatnuck neighborhood. Charles isn't at home when the call comes in. His daughter answers the phone. The man on the other line instructs her to tell her father to get down to the Italian Kitchen restaurant on Shrewsbury Street. When his daughter passes the message along, Charles hops into his prized Ford Thunderbird and travels straight to the Italian Kitchen as directed. His family would never see him again. 2 weeks after he went missing, Charles's Thunderbird is found in Boston's combat zone. But there are no signs of where Charles might be. More than 40 years later, the missing person case of 39-year-old Charles McArthur remains unsolved. Welcome back to Unsolved Worcester. I'm your host, Dan Yeager. Today's episode marks the first missing person case we've explored on Unsolved Worcester since Season 3. Charles McArthur was last seen on September 14th, 1982. He was being escorted out of the former Italian Kitchen restaurant on Shrewsbury Street by 3 men. And while Charles's case is listed as a missing persons case, everyone involved in the investigation believes he was likely murdered. Unsolved Worcester takes a deep dive every Tuesday into the unsolved murders and missing persons cases under investigation by the Worcester Police Department's Detective Unit and the Massachusetts State Police. Our goal is to remind residents of the Worcester area, both past and present, there are dozens of unsolved homicides and missing persons cases that need resolution. We hope we can be the spark needed to solve a case. Be sure to visit Unsolved Worcester on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and listen to all episodes for free at unsolvedworcester.com and on your favorite podcast streaming platforms. Check out the video for this episode with exclusive aerial views and more on the Unsolved Worcester YouTube page. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button. When Charles McArthur was escorted out of the Italian Kitchen by 3 men on September 14th, 1982, it didn't go unnoticed. There were witnesses on Shrewsbury Street that saw Charles being taken away, and it's likely there was no mistaking Charles for anyone else. He was over 6 feet tall and weighed around 250 pounds. He was muscular with a full beard and mustache. Charles had brown hair and green eyes. He had a pair of tattoos on his left arm, one of an eagle on the bottom and another that read Bill on his upper arm. Bill was his nickname. Charles had a full upper dentures and partial lower dentures. He was last seen wearing black or khaki-colored docker pants, a light-colored short-sleeved shirt, and dark shoes. Shortly before he disappeared, Charles had a mild heart attack, likely caused by stress. He also had a mastoidectomy, which is the removal of a bone in the ear. Charles worked as a supervisor at the Harrington and Richardson Firearms Company in Gardner. On the surface, Charles McArthur led a relatively normal life, living on Tarrytown Lane on the west side of Worcester with his wife, son, and daughter. But in the months leading up to Charles's disappearance, things began to go off the rails, and Charles wasn't his typical happy self at home. A heart attack, surgery, a girlfriend on the side, and a trip to Florida, all pinpoints on the map to Charles going missing. The girlfriend was a woman Charles worked with at the Harrington and Richards Firearms Company. In early 1982, police say Charles made a trip to Florida to pick up cocaine for someone and bring it back to Central Mass. He had somehow gotten involved in drug sales. According to a report in the Telegram and Gazette, Charles asked his girlfriend to hold the drugs for him, but she declined. She didn't want them in her home. So Charles asked a friend to hold the drugs. But when he went to retrieve them, the friend had either used the drugs or sold them. The drugs were gone, and now Charles was in trouble. The week leading up to his disappearance, Charles was scrambling. He was panicking. He was short on cash for whoever he owed for the drugs. And whoever wanted the money, they wanted it now. Charles needed to deliver $30,000. The day before he went missing, it appears Charles collected most of the cash owed, with a plan to collect the rest the following night, September 14th, 1982. But he never made it. Whoever wanted the money is likely the same person that wanted him down to the Italian kitchen that day, and probably the one that had Charles killed. They were tired of waiting. So the call was placed to the Tarrytown Lane home, and Charles McArthur made his final drive in his maroon Ford Thunderbird to Shrewsbury Street. He was escorted out of the Italian kitchen, never to be seen again. Coming up, we explore the aftermath of Charles's disappearance. In 1990, Charles was declared legally dead by a district court judge, leaving behind a wife and 2 children and 9 siblings. A gravestone bearing the name Charles McArthur sits empty in a cemetery. Run for decades by the Panarelli family, the Italian kitchen on Shrewsbury Street closed in early 2000, nearly 2 decades after Charles McArthur was escorted out of the restaurant by 3 men and vanished. 2 weeks after Charles was last seen on Shrewsbury Street, his maroon Ford Thunderbird was found in Boston's former combat zone, a designated adult entertainment district in the city. It was the first district of its kind in the United States, and the city's home for drug deals and prostitution. On the windshield of the Thunderbird was a pile of parking tickets, and inside was Charles's leather jacket and a pack of cigarettes. His family told the TNG he wouldn't have gone anywhere without them. There were no signs of where Charles may have gone. The investigation into Charles's whereabouts led Worcester police to quickly realize that Charles was likely killed. A WPD detective told the Telegram and Gazette that Charles got in over his head with criminal activity, and the drug money he owed was his undoing. The detective said Charles likely went to the Italian kitchen knowing he was going to be killed. And the investigation revealed evidence that Charles may have been dumped in a lake or pond somewhere. Police searched nearby Lake Quinsigamond, even pulling out several vehicles, but no sign of Charles. Law enforcement believes Charles was murdered by multiple people, but maybe not the 3 men that walked him out of the Italian kitchen. In 2012, a WPD homicide detective told the Telegram and Gazette that in the early stages of the investigation, police had developed several persons of interest. The detective said police believed the men that had escorted Charles out of the restaurant all still lived in the area. They had hoped someone who had been in the restaurant when Charles arrived in September 1982 would come forward with information. Because it was such a small restaurant, it would have been difficult to miss Charles. According to multiple reports, an unnamed prime suspect was still alive and living outside of the United States. The other suspects have died since Charles went missing. Charles McArthur is one of 8 unsolved missing persons cases listed among the Worcester Police Department's unresolved cases. He is one of 14 people missing from Worcester listed on the National Missing and Unidentified Persons System database. If he is alive today, Charles would be 80 years old. Thank you for listening. I'm Dan Yeager. Don't miss another episode. Click the notification button to get alerts when new episodes of Unsolved Worcester drop. If you enjoyed listening to this episode, please consider clicking the like button for us. And if you subscribe, the next episode will show up in your feed. Click the bell on the right and select all, and you'll get a notification of when the next episode is ready. If you have any thoughts you'd like to share, please leave them in the comments below. We do read them all and respond to as many as we can. Anyone with information about the whereabouts of Charles McArthur are asked to contact the Worcester Police Detective Bureau at 508-799-8651 or send an anonymous text to 274-637. Write TIP WPD plus your message, or send an anonymous web-based message at worcesterma.gov/police. Come back on Tuesday, October 17th for episode 3 of Unsolved Worcester Season 6 and a pair of recent unsolved murders in Worcester. The November 30th, 2019 shooting of 19-year-old Brandon Dursa and the 2022 murder of 17-year-old Yasmin Rosario. Information on the murder of Charles McArthur was gathered from multiple resources, including the Telegram and Gazette, the National Missing and Unidentified Persons System, the Doe Network, the Charlie Project, and more. The Unsolved Worcester podcast music is provided by Tom Lebelzik of the Worcester Jazz Collective. This episode is written and produced by Pat Sargent. Drone footage provided by Ron Scott at Chasing Daylight Studio. Videography and editing by Colin Turner. This program is supported in part by a grant from the Worcester Arts Council and the National Endowment for the Arts. To find out more about how National Endowment for the Arts grants impact individuals and communities, visit www.arts.gov.